Yes. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're very excited to have you joining us. Welcome to our Asia Pacific Women in Leadership Mentoring Program February webinar for our 5th cohort. We've titled this one The Art of Communication, a Key to Effective Leadership. My name is Glennis Kincaid. I'm one of the few couple APWiL Mentoring Program managers, and I also am a global learning advisor at the University of California, Santa Cruz. We are so excited to have you joining. Feel free to say hi in the chat, introduce yourself. Just share whatever you would like to share in chat so we can see who's joining us today. We're excited to delve into this topic for you all. We've seen across our 5 cohorts that we've had of this mentoring program that participants find the topic of communication as essential and a key to their growth as leaders, and many goals that we've read in your wonderful worksheets have shown us that communication is involved in some form or another for your goals and is just a key to growing as a leader. So we are thrilled to gather today and hear from 4 of our leaders across the Pacific Rim about their experiences and advice on this topic. We're excited to hear their perspectives, and we're hoping that it gives a variety of perspectives based on their different backgrounds and disciplines. Today we will have a moderated panel of speakers, and then followed by that is a Q&A in breakout rooms where you'll have more time to discuss this topic with panelists. And I will next introduce our moderator for today, Professor Joanna Regulska, who's also our APWiL co-chair. Professor Regulska is Vice Provost and Dean of Global Affairs and Distinguished Professor of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies at the University of California, Davis. She worked with former APWiL co-chair Serena and APRU to launch the APWiL Mentoring Program in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. That feels like so long ago, yet it was not so long ago. She is highly regarded in the international community with more than 30 years of transformative experience in higher education and global education. In 2021, she was named an inaugural member of the National Academy for International Education. A respected scholar, her research concentrates on women's political activism, grassroots mobilization, decentralization, democracy, and democratization with a focus on Europe and the Caucasus. And we'll hand it over. Thank you so much, Joanna, for moderating today.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone. So good to see so many of you. It's always a wonderful moment where we can get together, and I know that very often it's unfortunately on the Zoom only, but still, we have a community, and I think that's what it's so important. So thank you, Glennis and Chelsea and David and Adriana for putting all of this fabulous work, and of course to our panelists. And I have now a pleasure to introduce our panelists. So the way it's going to work is that each speaker will answer 1 or 2 prepared questions that really touch upon the skills and important lessons learned about the communication and leadership, but also recognizing how diverse ways to audiences and to issues we might take. If you have questions to panelists, please jot them down in the chat, or you can wait until the opening of the breakout session. And one other thing I wanted to do, because I thank everybody except the partner in crime, and that is Yvonne. And I don't know if the Yvonne is still here with us, because I know she's gonna need to leave. But
I'm here, Joanna.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. And I just wanted to thank you and the University of Malaya for being such a fantastic partner over all those years. So without further ado, our first speaker is Dr. Ching Go. Dr. Go is a professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. And by the way, I'm an urban geographer, so it's very, very close. At the University of Malaya, and she chairs the Social Advancement and Happiness Research Cluster. She holds a bachelor's degree in urban planning and master degree in Master of Science in Tourism, tourism planning from University Technology Malaya, and PhD in geography from Bonn University, Germany. So here at least the geographers are right now in majority because there's two. I am a geographer too also. She also actually gained some important experiences outside of the university in corporate world in Malaya. She specializes in human environment interaction with the interdisciplinary approach that focuses on sustainability, inclusion, and impact of the anthropogenic actions on the environment. She secures many grants and received grants from Global Challenges Research Fund, and before that from other foundations. So very well published with numerous of peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and other work. And of course, as we do in academia, supervising PhD students and master students to completion. Currently, she has 12 ongoing students. Dr. Go is actually current mentor in the 5th cohort of our mentoring program. So if I can ask you, thank you so much for joining us. And if I can ask you the first question, and that is, what strategies or tools would you recommend for leaders who are looking to improve their communication skills? And maybe as a follow-up, maybe there are some specific techniques you find particularly useful for leading teams in challenging or high-pressure situation.
Thank you, Joanna, for that very generous introduction. So good morning, everyone. At the moment, I'm in London, so it's cold, wet, and also windy as well. Well, very happy to be here and to share some of my experience that. So, as mentioned earlier, I'm a professor in academics. So basically, this is that by doing teaching, I'm doing also research, and that is part of my passions. So when we talk about communication, I think that will be many levels and also different dimensions. The first one, of course, is that when we talk to the students or we communicate with the students, I remember that is how I started right very much earlier, is that I was very ambitious. I would like to share all my knowledge, whatever I have, with my students. And after a couple of years, I do realize that that should not be the case. The main reason is that when we talk about communications or when we talk about knowledge, basically is that we would like the person or a group of people that we are communicating with to understand the message. So the goal is actually to understand the message. And this is where that I start looking from their perspective and to think that, okay, it is not about how much knowledge that I would like to share with them, but it's also about how much that they can take in. And that is where that I start develop this empathy as well. And that is through my students. So it also means that I learn from my students. So that's how I started. And then when it comes to the research, I think it's really interesting because it really depends on the disciplines, the colleagues from different disciplines or very specific disciplines that we are communicating with or we are working in a team, and also whether we are working in the cultural environments as well. So this is where I'm coming from. And I would like to share that's one very particular case where I was leading this research projects that we have. It's a multiple countries project. So the funder is from the UK, and we have within Southeast Asia, from the Philippines and from Indonesia. And we have a case of misaligned expectations when it comes to the project deliverables, also the timelines. And that has been a tension because that's a delays impacted all these interconnected tasks. Because at these particular projects, we are working with the coastal communities. And at the same time is that we are also working with the scientists in marine research or ocean research then. So we are talking with different colleagues from different disciplines, meaning that from the natural science, as well as from social science and humanities as well. And everyone's have a different expectations. And everyone's have a different understandings when we even talk about timelines. When we talk about model, for instance, what it means by model. So that's what we really have to go down to the very basic levels to understand what actually everyone's have in mind. And how we started is that we actually go to a very personal levels, like talk like one-to-one. Yeah, so that's why we try to avoid as well it can be a stress and also pressures when we have a group dynamics, when we try to talk in a big group, for instance. And then so that's also where that there are some researchers that they would feel more comfortable to talk in person rather than in a large group. So this is some things that we really need to embrace as well. And one more thing is that this is what we realize when we talk about research. I think this is one of the very big areas that all the academics have to focus on, is that the PI, the principal investigators in different countries, face different challenges. In some countries, for instance, when we have research management, the whole the profession, for instance, is very well established. The principal investigators normally are left to really work on the project. But in many developing countries, the principal investigators basically are the runners and trying to connecting the dots as well. And so this is where that's through communications, especially one-to-one level, that is where that we start to understand the challenges, not only from the culture, but also the norms that we have in that particular countries as well. And I think through that communications, me myself also, I built my capacities and understandings as well. And what I really learned from this particular case is that to listen and to listen actively. I think this is one thing that our scientists used to want to share and to communicate ideas. And it's not only about communicating ideas clearly, but it's also to listen, because then it will be more reflective as well. And maybe one more point that I would like to also emphasize here is that when we talk about communications, it's not only to other groups of people. When we talk about more seniors, researchers, or with our early careers colleagues, but at the same time, it's about communications with ourselves. I think this is where that's when we when we talk to others, it is really, really important to communicate within ourselves, not only about the reflections, but at the same time is that to be constructive and also be affirmative as well, that's progress that has been done each time that we communicate. Yeah, I think
Great.
that's all then for now. Yeah, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ho. I think actually that ending of your to listen and to also communicate with ourselves is something very important, because sometimes we don't remember, right? We talk. So thank you very much for bringing those several points, but those two especially resonated with me. So now I would like to ask our next speaker, Dr. Patricia Gerber. who is Associate Professor of Teaching and the Director of the Degree Programs for Pharmacists at the University of British Columbia, UBC. She's overseeing graduate diploma in pharmacy leadership and the flexible doctor of pharmacy program. Oh, I never heard about the flexible doctor. She earned her pharmacy degree and pharmacy practice residency and then doctor of pharmacy from UBC. And she actually worked for 15 years at Children's Women's Health Center as a clinical pharmacist and education coordinator. She teaches pediatric pharmacotherapy, ethics, and leadership courses at UBC, and also has designed Canada's first leadership course in the pharma program, the doctor program, doctor of pharmacy program. She is now in the 8th iteration with LinkedIn alumni community, over 70 plus participants. She led the design and launch of 3 major programs over the years, most recently the Entry to Practice PharmaD program. Dr. Gerber has been recognized with local and national awards for teaching and education contribution, as has mentored hundreds of students and colleagues over the last 25 years, including serving as a faculty advisor to multiple professional student groups. So thank you, Dr. Gerber, for joining us. And I was going to ask you actually a question addressing bias and championing DEI. This is a topic that has been very important for many of us as we communicate. And I was wondering if you can talk about how leaders, particularly women, use their communication skills to address unconscious bias, raise awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and foster more equitable outcomes within their teams. So what strategies, language, which actually will kind of connect probably with Dr. Go presentation, approaches can we adopt?
Well, thank you very much, Joanna, and welcome everybody. I am joining from beautiful Vancouver, Canada, where it's sunny and a little bit cool. So it's afternoon for me, but good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I thought I'd start by sharing sort of a general top 3 communication tips and lessons. And I'm going to do that vulnerably because I think vulnerability is very important for leaders, in that what I'm going to share is in a very continuous journey for me, because as I'm sure all of you would attest, whether you have a lot of experience leading or not, is that leadership is a journey. And so we never finish learning how to do this better and better. And so here's my top 3, if you wish. The first one that I've learned so far is about the importance of being self-aware of how I'm actively listening. And what I mean by this is making a point of really consciously asking myself, am I truly concentrating in what I'm hearing the other person say? Or am I preparing what am I going to say back? How am I going to respond? And that takes a lot of self-awareness and, again, vulnerability. And something that I kind of force myself to use as a tool is I paraphrase. What I mean by this is I try to repeat back what I heard the other person say, or what I think I heard the other person say. It makes the other person feel heard. It also gives them a chance to correct me if they don't think that I'm accurate. And this doesn't have to be hard. This could be easy with things like, for example, here's what I think I heard from you. Is this what you meant for me to hear? Or, before I respond, can I check that essentially what you suggested was that blah, blah, blah.
Recording in progress.
It can also be in the form of, I heard your explanation, but to help me understand better, can you say more about such and such? So that's number 1. Number 2 is learning to say what I need to say in fewer words. And I think this is hard. This is really hard. And a tool that sometimes helps me is I have key points written down. I think we all tend to, especially when we're starting in our careers, feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, where we feel that we have a tendency to unnecessarily repeat what we say so that it sounds better or it's more credible. And that's the imposter, right? So I find that if I have key points written down, that helps. Then my last tip is around what I think as women, emotional intelligence is our superpower. And we have that. And so what I'm going to share is that I think the tip is around emotions, especially in tough situations, being vulnerable, communicating with my team what I'm concerned about, what I'm afraid of, how I'm coping in this challenging time. It goes a long way. It humanizes us. It helps us enhance trust in a team. And with that comes establishing a culture where communication is happening safely, where everyone feels free to express not just what they think, but their authentic selves. And that naturally helps build rapport. And with that, I think goes the piece about being empathetic. Things like, I know we're all stressed right now. I feel it too. Here's what I'm trying to do to cope. So again, to show emotion, show that I'm human, and connect with my team. Then as far as the bias and piece that Joanna asked, it's again about listening and creating a culture where everyone's voice is not just heard, is not just welcome, but is invited. That's not the same. I need to make my team feel invited. So I think, again, self-awareness is huge here. Being honest with myself, with ourselves before sending out an email or before leading a meeting or having a discussion with someone, asking myself, what are my personal biases here? It's hard to do, and it requires a lot of self-awareness and vulnerability, but it goes a long way. The other piece, and I'm conscious of time, the other piece is about avoiding myself and watching for, in others, in my team, words or phrases that can be stereotypes or can be harmful. Things like, hey, you guys, or expressions like, come on, let's man up, like things like that that are so in our everyday society. Those can be offensive stereotypes. And in an era where we want to be inclusive leaders, we want to be watching for our biases, I think those are quick, easy things. And the last one I'll share is practice speaking in the we rather than in the I. So using a lot more us, a lot more we, and less I. And so modeling inclusivity, modeling that kind of leadership in the things that I do, in the little things as well as the big things, but especially starting with the little things, is a form of leading by example, and I think it goes a long way. So I'll leave you with, for example, I noticed that in our meetings, certain voices were quieter. What can we do to invite those of you who were more quiet so that you feel more empowered to speak up? Or I like to hear ideas from those who haven't had a chance to speak yet. So again, having that awareness of who is quieter, how do I make them feel invited? I'll pause there. Happy to look forward to more conversations in our breakout rooms.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you. Truly appreciate. I think so often actual specific tips help us, and phrases that we can then capture and use makes our speaking very, very more effective and more inclusive, which I think that's big chunk of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to move now to Dr. Serena Young, who is a clinical professor of pediatrics at UC Davis Health. All right, UC Davis, go, go, go. She is providing primary care for infants and children from newborns to adolescents. So very specific audience to communicate with. She completed her pediatric residency and then fellowship in academic general pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital. Then she earned an MPH, so Master in Public Health, if I'm correct, right? In International and Family Health from University of Texas, Houston School of Public Health. She actually focuses on comprehensive primary care. So she collaborates with patients and families and very multidisciplinary teams to address the special needs of children, including partnering with specialists, mental health providers, school, community agency. So many different groups to communicate with. She is dedicated to training healthcare professionals, particularly in the underserved regions, mentoring students, residents, faculty. And she advocates for innovative clinical community partnerships to improve the health system. So welcome, my dear colleague. Actually, we haven't met yet, so here we go. Historical moment. So looking at the cultural considerations in communication, which obviously you have plenty because your patients and parents are coming from all kinds of different walks of life. So effective communication is often cited as a cornerstone of strong leadership, but it can also present some challenges. Can you share a time in your leadership journey when communication was actually particularly challenging? And what steps have you taken to navigate and resolve the situation?
Thanks so much, Joanna, for that lovely introduction. And I'm so overwhelmed and humbled by this panel you put together of esteemed experts in this topic. And I also wanted to appreciate your wisdom and all the leaders of APWiL for even having this talk, this session on communication, which is so foundational to everything, our lives, our work, our homes. So thank you. So I've reflected on your question, also wanted to also do my top three with Patricia's inspiration, because I've had many challenges, more to count, whether it's on the academic campus, but also just now I'm fully in my role now as kind of leading the community engagement, overseeing community engagement for the Department of Pediatrics here at UC Davis. I'm being very, very mindful and I'm trying very hard to live by certain strategies. So I wanted to talk about the three major, big top three cultural considerations that I hold with me every day in my work and when I'm communicating with others. And so the first philosophy, and I took some notes, so as I was writing this down, make sure I don't miss anything. The first philosophy that I live by is cultural humility. And so cultural humility, this is a concept that is not a new concept. Actually, I have my dear mentor and friend, Dr. Jan Murray Garcia at UC Davis, and pediatrician too, for really founding this concept of cultural humility. And her landmark sentinel opinion piece on cultural humility versus cultural competence. I'm kind of I lean on this every day. And so I wanted to direct you all to looking at this in more detail after I share with you some quotes from this article. But she challenges us in the Sentinel article to move beyond just awareness and understanding of cultures, and really try to aspire to commit to a lifelong process of humility, flexibility, and compassion around others' beliefs, values, and behaviors. She describes cultural humility as being flexible and humble enough to let go of your false sense of security that stereotyping brings. And then also we need to be able to assess anew every single time, every interaction, every conversation is a new conversation, right? To then be able to say, what are the cultural dimensions of this conversation? And that could be with my patients, my families that I'm supporting, and then their health. It could be students, my colleagues, and I'm also leading a division of general pediatricians. It could be, how are my colleagues and pediatricians doing, right? And the nurses, et cetera, right? So every single one of these interactions is a cultural experience, right? It also, cultural humility, she challenges us to think about this as a commitment to the redress of power imbalances. in relationship dynamics. Which brings me to the next cultural consideration, the second big one that I take with me every day, that I try to practice, and that's thinking about my positionality. And the way I think about positionality is that it's really a combination of the social and the political context in which my identity is born, and then how my identity then influences and then biases. And thank you, Patricia, for your wisdom. Then my own biases then can bias my own perception of the world, and then it affects my decisions, my experiences, and my interactions with others. So by regularly examining my own positionality, and then also the privilege and the power that comes with just because of my identity is who it just comes with it, right? I feel better about then being able to identify whose voice I need to invite. Thank you, Patricia. Who I need to invite, who I need to bring in the room, because without understanding that, and reflecting about that is who is not in the room and potentially could be suppressed and even oppressed by me and my power and my position. And this is being vulnerable right now, is that affects me and greatly. And especially when I'm working in the community with the community to impact health, this is something super important to me is positionality and what I bring myself. And the last piece, the third thing, cultural consideration, communication that is also with regards to belonging and creating. I'm fully committed to creating that culture. That's culture. Well, culture is is workplace culture is. Do you feel like you belong here? And that's everywhere where if I'm a pediatrician, if I'm at home with my family, if I'm in the community and when I'm welcoming and trying to understand what our communities need and what their strengths are. That culture of belonging is something that I have a part in setting forward. And so it's important to me that everyone on the team, whether again, it's all the settings that I just described, they feel valued and celebrated and then leveraged. So their strengths, I truly, truly listen, as Patricia and Hong described. Listening, that active listening is, who are you about, and what are you so most proud of, and how can I leverage your strength and move this mutual mission forward? And so when all of us have a sense of belonging together, it then protects us during these times of stress. And boy, our country is going through some pretty intense stress right now, and we are pushing all the levers as possible and because of the fact that we've set that culture of belonging, and we're working on, we continue to work on that I feel confident that we're going to get through this as we have always done. So thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to share the big three in my life for the culture considerations and communication. I look forward to learning with others as well today.
Thank you. Fantastic. I am truly feeling privileged that I have such a wonderful colleagues whom I have not even met. So thank you for sharing, Dr. Young, with us all your thinking. And now our final speaker, and that is Professor Susan Rowland. She is a Vice Provost at the University of Sydney, overseeing university-wide initiatives that support academic operation and development. Professor Rowland is a leader in science education, is internationally recognized for her work on large-scale undergraduate research experiences and science communication, and is very, very much dedicated to education innovation, teaching and learning strategies, and enhancing really student and staff experience as they move through their academic professional development. She chairs thematic reviews, academic appointment, promotion committee, all these important things that actually on which our universities, our academic community functions and builds on. Currently, she leads initiative on academic development, workforce capability building, and reward recognition, as well as the Sage Athena Swan initiative for gender equality in academia. We actually part of the Sage Athena Swan also initiative. So let me move to questions. For many leaders, especially us women, the confidence in communication can be a challenge, and definitely has been always, as an immigrant from Poland, it has been always a challenge for me. So what advice would you give to someone looking to build their confidence and assertiveness in their communication style?
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you for that kind welcome. And hello, everybody. Lovely to see you. I'm here in Sydney. It is sunny right now, and I'm on beautiful Gadigal land. So I'd like to pay my respects to the Gadi people, who are the traditional owners of these lands, and acknowledge their extraordinarily long history of caring for country and culture. So it's a really, really interesting question that you've asked, Joanna, and I've been thinking about it from multiple different perspectives. You can think about your confidence and your assertiveness in one-to-one communication. You can think about it in a small group, in a large group. You can think about it in terms of when you have positionality as a positional leader. You can also think about it in terms of when you are a member of the group and there's somebody else with more positional power, for example, in the room. So I started thinking from the perspective of what for me has been the biggest fear in my communication style and what has helped me. So I'm also going to go down this vulnerable and quite personal path that the other speakers have gone down. Thanks everyone for leading the way on that. I was thinking about probably the most scary thing for me, and certainly as a more junior academic, and then trying to sort of make my voice heard in a group, was this idea of being in a group of people, particularly a group of people who might have quite strong opinions, who may be more senior than I was, or maybe more assertive in the way they speak. And I thought, what is it that I have done in those times to be heard? For me, my biggest fear in that space was always the idea that I would say something stupid. You know, I'm a scientist, and right, scientists, we like to have all the facts before we speak. And for a long time, I was really held back by the idea that I didn't have all the facts, I didn't know everything, and so I just couldn't say anything because my opinion wasn't valid. It wasn't until I started interacting with a lot of people across the university, this was at my previous university, and I found that a lot of people from other disciplines actually would just speak their mind. They would actually have an opinion or something that was drawn from their personal experience. And it was considered completely valid in the room when people spoke up about that kind of thing. And I was shocked because in science, you tend to much more trade on, well, we know that 67% of staff have this opinion. So therefore, this is the way we should go. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. But actually, if you're sitting in the room with a bunch of people who are from the social sciences, you will hear terms like, well, the lived experience of this group is, and that is completely valid. And you can also say, my lived experience is, and that is also completely valid. Terrifying for a scientist to start with that kind of language. But I've learned to do it over time, and I've learned it by watching people who do it really well. And there's a few things that I think really hold together in the way they do these things well and the things that I practice now. So the first thing is that you really want to be part of the conversation in the room. So we heard about this idea of really listening deeply, and listening without the idea that you're just going to, you're going to say something, you're going to say what you think you should say. So Patricia said this to us, listen, because you're thinking about the train of the conversation and thinking about what it is that others are thinking about and the things that they're picking up on. So that's the first part of it. You listen to what other people are saying and the things that they're saying that are appreciated and received by others, and you look at the way they're saying it. Are they saying it really aggressively? Are they saying they're right? You'll generally find in a room that people aren't listening to those people. Even though those people might be really loud and really forceful, they're actually often just making fools of themselves. And the people who are being listened to are the people who say quiet, linking things. So that's the next part of it, right? You want to have something new to contribute. That new contribution can be often very authentic, come from your experience, your ideas, your scholarship, as an academic, but something that is new. So again, you will often hear in a room, the person who says the same thing over and over again, either within the one meeting or they go to multiple meetings and they say the same thing at every meeting, people just stop listening to them. So what people are listening for is the new, the interesting, something that moves the conversation forward. In a room full of talking people, you only need to say one pertinent, thoughtful thing, and people will remember that, versus you saying 50 somewhat silly, ill thought out things. So I encourage you to think about that one new thing you might like to contribute. And often you go to a meeting with that thing in advance in your mind. This is the approach I want to take in this meeting, and I'm going to look for the space in the conversation where I can add this thing that I want people to hear. And then the third part, so we heard from Serena about this idea of cultural humility. You need to think about the culture of that meeting. Right? Every meeting, every conversation you go into has a culture associated with it. Think about what that culture is and think about how you can contribute something positive to that culture. And often that is inviting others to speak. So you go in with the perspective that even though you're a junior person, maybe you're a host. And so you may contribute something, or you may even stop the conversation and go, I just heard something from Serena there. Serena started this idea of such and such. I'd really like to hear the ending of that. And it's really remarkable when you stop a really loud, voluble conversation and you give space for others, again, how people go, whoa. Well, they listen to you suddenly because you have inserted power, even though you might not have said anything yourself. So I think those are extraordinarily important points. Other short tips, because I don't want to talk forever. Practice. Watch people who do it well, copy them. I have shamelessly copied a bunch of people that I think are really good communicators throughout my life. It's so useful. Go and talk to those folks. And I have a great phrase for you. I would value your input. Say to them, I really liked how you run that. I would really value your input on and have something you want to ask them about, something specific, because valuing somebody's input is the best way to get them to communicate with you. And then again, this idea of being vulnerable, when you go to somebody and you say, I really admire how you did that. I have this question about how I do something. I'd value your input. That's a really great way to make a friend with that person. And you've made them feel happy, you've made them feel valuable, but you've also had a peer-to-peer conversation rather than tell me what to do, which is not good. You don't want to roll over and show your tummy. You want to be peers with people. So I think I'll stop there. They're my main points. I'm looking forward to the breakout rooms.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you. Please join me. All four speakers have really added so much. And this is what is so wonderful about doing these things. I love them because I learn and I remind myself. And when Susan was talking, I said, oh yeah, when I came to this country, I would not open my mouth, literally. And in fact, I'm still fearful of speaking. I do speak, but I am fearful inside me. I am still fearful. Coming from Poland, from the country where actually initially you weren't speaking in the class, I came from the culture where you sit and listen, but not speak. So I start writing a list of things that kind of resonated with me. So I'm just going to quickly go, and I am missing several, I'm sure, but positionality, self-awareness, listening, power structure, sense of belonging, cultural humility, lived experience, emotional intelligence, language, words, one new thing, practice, copy people, and what do I have said? I don't know. I have much more, but I think that it's just such a rich conversation and so many wonderful things that I truly appreciate you all bringing from different perspectives. I'm going to stop here.